Well, my name is Xerxes Desai. Um, I spent the better part of my life working for the Tata Group, initially in basically apprenticeship positions with senior Tata directors. Then I went to the Taj Group, where I played a fairly prominent role along with Ajit Kerkar in transforming the Taj from a 1.25 hotel into a chain.
So you
After that,
actually built the new Taj building? Yeah.
I did, yes, the Taj Intercontinental, and we completely rebuilt the old Taj, which was a more demanding exercise. And we also started expanding outside of Bombay, Udaipur, Jaipur, Goa, Chennai, and so on, Hyderabad, yeah. And after that, I did a stint with Citco. I was on deputation from the Tata Group with the blessings of JRD Tata and worked on the New Bombay project. And when I was summoned back into the Tata fold, I went to Tata Press, which was our printing, publishing company, and well, played a transformational role there as well. And it's in Tata Press that the idea of Titan was conceived and took some shape, and that was the next thing I did.
What's the relationship with Tata Press and Titan?
Well, Titan was incubated at Tata Press. That's what happened, and I reckon that my claim to fame really lies in what I did in Titan. Titan Watches, it was then called, and later became Titan Industries.
So you were sort of, in those days they didn't call them startups, but you actually had to go and set up a joint venture with a government company, as I understand.
That's right. Well, we would have preferred, I think, to do it on our own and not with a government company. But the only way that we could, in those days, get into that business was through the joint sector. We tried to do it on our own, but we were told by the government then, and this is before the liberalization process started, that the watch industry had been reserved for the public sector and the small scale, and there was no room for us, large business houses, in the watch segment. So we did it finally through a joint venture with Tamil Nadu.
So what kind of challenges did you have in sort of setting up Titan? Because
well, I reckon the biggest challenge was in getting government approval. And that took us, in fact, several years. The next big challenge was in finding a suitable technical partner. Because in those days, one couldn't enter a particular segment unless one undertook manufacturing, and government said that we'd have to manufacture the movement. And it took us quite a while, in fact, to find a suitable technical partner. In fact, there was no one else left when we finally found Franz Bosch.
okay, so you had to find an international partner to get this.
We had to find an international partner because no one in India was manufacturing movements, barring HMT, who had got that know-how from Citizen.
And sort of how did it proceed from there? So you set up this joint venture operation, you brought in a technical partner, and then...
And then it was a question of building a team of like-minded people, and creating a certain type of culture. I wanted to be a very different culture from what I had experienced in a whole host of Tata companies with which I had been associated in my previous assignments.
And some of the people that you've brought on have gone on now to become sort of leaders both inside the Tata Group and outside. I mean, Ravi Kant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they have done wonderfully well for themselves. And they have, I think, 99% of them have a very affectionate remembrance of their days with Titan. And we're perhaps one of the few companies in the world, maybe, that has basically an alumni association where former Titanians come together once a year or twice a year and, and share memories and experiences and things of that sort.
So, in a sense, it was like sort of an educational and institution that you built, which sort of helped build a different set of people who actually went on to become entrepreneurs and change makers in their own way.
That's right. I think it was a learning organization, no doubt about that. And while we expected our people to pursue things with passion, without passion, nothing great, I think, can be achieved. It had to be informed passion. It has to have a strong intellectual, cerebral, rational basis. In our scheme of things, you couldn't come in with preferences or predilections or do things because I like to do it that way. There had to be solid, rational arguments for doing everything, whichever way it had to be. We wanted it to be done. There had to be solid, rational arguments and pursued with passion.
But in spite of that, you took decisions that were very different at that point of time. You actually took much younger people who were not very well educated and trained an entire workforce out of that. You had very different.
That was the workforce in the factory.
Yes.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. We wanted the very best. We did not want people whose minds had been maybe warped by working in another organization. And so we went to the schools in and around Hosur, in fact in the whole of Dharmapuri district and beyond, in fact, and spoke to the teachers and spoke to the students about what we were looking for and what kind of a future awaited them. And out of maybe 100 who were interviewed, 3 were selected. And then they were put through a very rigorous training program. In fact, the selection program itself involved a whole lot of aptitude tests and attitude tests. And in terms of attitude, for instance, an assembly worker didn't have to have a questioning mind, whereas somebody who was working maybe in a lab or on a machine had to have a questioning mind. And we then put them through a very rigorous training program. They were very young when they joined. They were 15, 16, 17 years old. And we had to teach them not only how to make watches, we also had to teach them how to live, how to get along with the other sex, how to meet their obligations to their families because they were being paid well. And I was quite determined that we wanted to be the best paymasters in Hosur. I do not believe in the capitalist theory of exploitation. And the interesting thing is, that we, about 95% of our employees who were taken after the 10th standard have gone on to get university degrees and diplomas through the distance education process. So we were a learning organization.
That's very dramatic.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have done wonderfully well for themselves. And of course, many of them have moved on to managerial positions within the company.
It was also a very inclusive environment. You had a large number of people who were differently able, a lot higher than...
You're absolutely right. We had close to 200 people who were either had a vision problem, major vision problem, or who had a speech and hearing problem. And they were, I think, extremely well assimilated into the organization. We had a very good leader for the whole process. And we started our own township, and we started our own school for the children of our employees. Last year, we offered the first batch of students for the 10th standard examination, and our most outstanding student has a father, I should say, who was hearing and speech impaired. And that's a wonderful feeling to get.
So what is it that sort of enabled this to happen? I mean, is it just good leadership or process or finding the right people to create a learning organization of such scale, which not only did that for its own people, but produced a brand? It produced India's first sort of international brand. I mean, Titan became one of India's first global products.
Well, I think there were two aspects to it. One was that what we were doing was very much in the Tata tradition, very much what JRD wanted JRD Tata wanted to achieve. And we had a band of people who were determined to do things differently, not just do things well, but to do things differently.
But to give you an example, I mean, I wear a Titan Edge.
So do I.
Yeah. And the reason I wear a Titan Edge is this is India's, first claim to fame in terms of engineering product design. This was tennis watch.
We encourage not only individual brilliance, but group brilliance, and also the ability to work together well in a team. And like many of our things, this movement was the result of a highly motivated team. And we created an atmosphere. It was a very friendly atmosphere that we had, and there was enormous freedom of thought and action. And some of the people who came to us from the public sector were at the beginning wary of making mistakes. But our attitude was, look, if you don't make mistakes, we'll never learn. And we'll just keep on doing the same old proven things. So fine, mistakes will be made, hopefully not too many, and not the same again and again. Mistakes will be made, but we're going to move on, and from there and put in our very best, and that's what they did. And the thing is that you can't build a great organization without what JRD Tata considered two essential ingredients. One was pride in the organization. The organization had to succeed for the individual to be successful. And the other was excitement, excitement about doing things not only well, as I said, but doing things differently.
But what is it that we lack in most Indian institutions, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector, that doesn't lead to this kind of environment, that doesn't lead to this kind of innovation? It's only recently that we've seen more and more institutions coming that way, but even that's not, hardly enough.
Well, I think there was a fear factor, and there was also this belief that there were leaders who had all the answers. And one thing we made clear to any employee who joined was, look, we don't have all the answers. So you've got to find the answers. And we've got only problems. And we want you to solve the problems.
Does this have anything to do with Navi Mumbai, or it was sort of independent, your work on the social sector?
I think it did have, I mean, it was a revelation working on New Bombay. What the scope and the complexity of things working on a project of that nature was so different from the highly specialized businesses that we were in. It was, I think it was that really which opened my eyes to the possibility. If I hadn't done that, maybe I wouldn't have, chosen the course that I did. But my involvement in the social sector is not confined to urban issues. Well, increasingly it is, thanks to you. But that was not my original intention, was to have a better spread of my time. But having said that, let me say this, that urban affairs has been a passion with me, and
even before Navi Mumbai, or did that sort of coalesce things?
No, not before. Not before. It was New Bombay then.
Okay, yes,
okay,
sorry.
all right. It was before
before I became
Mr. Thackeray decided to change all that. Well, sometimes the change I do not welcome. But New Bombay.
So you chose to come to the New Bombay project, or JRD just?
No, I was lured into it by our chairman, Shirish Patel, and by Charles Correa.
And what did they give you?
No, none at all. It was just an opportunity to paint on a larger canvas. And really, I went in, I knew nothing about urbanization. I knew something about project management. And that's really where I came in, as managing a project. And it was while managing the project that I learned a great deal about urbanization.
The messiness of cities and the complexity of trying
Absolutely.
to pretend that you can do something about them.
It was. I mean, it was a tremendous experience. I've no doubt that I benefited much more than New Bombay did, but it was a tremendous experience, because at one time you're dealing with transport, another time you're dealing with education, a third time you're dealing with health issues and all kinds of things, and.
Was there a very large team that you worked with there, or just a small?
Oh, we had a smallish team, but we had a very gifted team.
And sort of, how long did that teamwork go on, and how did that process evolve?
Well, I was there for just about 2.5 years and worked essentially firstly on the Vashi development plan and getting it started, and then on the whole development plan for the city as a whole.
And what was your sort of experience like working with government at that point of time? Or were you completely sort of autonomous? You had no.
No, we had a fair amount of autonomy in the way we worked, but getting acceptance was another thing. I mean, I used to find it quite strange. Some of the people there were from government and soaked in its methods of working, and they would write on notes things like, "It is not known why, whether the chief engineer has looked at this and looked at that," which was their way of saying that he hasn't looked at it. But my reaction was that if you don't know, then why don't you go ask him? So it was a bit of a clash of cultures, maybe. And another thing I learned working with J.B. D'Souza, who was the managing director, an outstanding civil servant. I was presenting to him some arguments that he could advance when he met one of the ministers. I think it was the chief minister, and I was going through my list of points, and every time I finished a point, he would say so. Then I went to the 9th point, 10th point, and then JBD stopped me and said, you know, I'm looking for that only one point which will convince the chief minister. The other things are of no relevance to him. He's not looking for the whole argument. He's looking for what will appeal to him. Well.
But eventually, in a sense, the project sort of was taken over by the bureaucracy and it didn't achieve some of its larger aims. I mean, strategically, it's obviously where the city should be or should have been.
Yes, I reckon that, well, I actually lost touch after a while, got involved in other things, moved my base in Bombay to Bangalore. Yes, I think it was a combination of many things. Lack of awareness of the importance of what we were doing, the significance of what we were doing, lack of money also in those days, and there was also the problem of we were supposed to be a counter magnet to Bombay, but the chief minister was developing his own magnet in South Bombay at Nariman Point, and also at Bandra Kurla, which we handled for a while. But there wasn't this realization at that time of how important this New Bombay project was. As you know, I mean, Bombay had a terribly lopsided development. The concentration of jobs in the south, extreme south, and population north of it, and long commuting times, and people hanging out of railway compartments, occasionally dropping off and being killed. A terribly lopsided development, deteriorating infrastructure, hugely deteriorating infrastructure, and also breakout of the limitations of an island city. And also start a greenfield project which was outside the scope of the Bombay Municipal Corporation. And both these things led us to choose a location across the harbor, you know, breaking the constraints of an island, getting away from the Municipal Corporation, Bombay. This was an eastward move, you know, into the heart of Maharashtra, rather than expanding northwards into Gujarat. And it just made a lot of sense from many points of view. I think it's begun to work out, well, the importance of New Bombay can perhaps be gauged from the fact that some of the cricket matches are held there instead of at the Braven Stadium or the Wankhede Stadium in South Bombay.
Yeah, and they're fighting like the devil now about a new airport, which will actually be the biggest airport in the city.
Yes, yes. I mean, we are one of the few cities in the world where there's an airport in the middle of the city.
Berlin, few others.
At one time, it was on the periphery of the city. As a kid, we were taken for our annual holiday to Bandra. You know, you can imagine how different Bombay was at that time.
So if you look back now at New Bombay, and you know, what would you have done that's different? We had a political engagement, trying to get more people into the project, get better management, get more resources. I mean, if one wanted to make a success, I mean, it's obvious that the city is going to be where it is. That's where the mega region is going to sort of coalesce around over the next 30, 40 years. But how would one have done that differently if you were to do it again?
Well, times have changed. I think there is this realization you have to have workable cities. And in fact, there is a competition now between the states of India to make their cities workable and to attract investment, either the industrial sector or the services sector, to attract investment to cities, and to do that you need cities that work, and I think that realization has finally dawned, and I reckon that we will not be able to do away with the venality of politicians for some time, but hopefully they will make their money doing the right thing instead of doing the wrong thing, which is a step forward.
So, but the thing is, in the 80s, Rajiv Gandhi apparently picked up on this idea, and that's how he created the NCU, and all of you got involved in looking at that process. And how did that happen, and what happened to it afterwards? Because it sort of sunk pretty much like a stone.
Well, things began to change after Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, and that began to show itself in many aspects of India's life. In fact, Titan would not have been, it would not have come into existence under the old regime, the ancient regime. It's only after Rajiv Gandhi came to power that we were permitted to go ahead with this project, and so a lot of thinking changed, so one of the things he did was to constitute the National Commission on Urbanization under the chairmanship of Charles Courier, and with Mahesh Bhuch as the vice chairman. I was one of the members of that commission, and we prepared a report of prodigious size. I don't know whether any single individual ever read the report from one end of the shelf to the other. But it was the first, I think, major attempt to define a future for India's urbanization.
But why did that sort of drop off? Why did it sort of go off the radar? We almost had a decade till the JNURM, where, in spite of all the work that was done, and liberalization
I think it was
simultaneously.
But that was the problem, perhaps. The other developments came in the way. Unfortunately, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. We had an interregnum of governments which were probably groping in the dark. It ended with a huge foreign currency crisis, and with a basic economic crisis. The focus shifted to managing first the foreign currency crisis, then the financial crisis, then the economic crisis, and then there was a global economic slowdown at the end of the 90s and the early part of this century, and then came liberalization, globalization. That became the focus. So in a way, this kind of lost its importance, the whole urbanization plan that we had, and then, It got picked up later on after some of those problems got sorted out or began to be sorted out. We,
But
people
could it have
turned.
been that the urbanization, as it was conceived at that time, was situated in a somewhat more closed economy, and that frame then had to be sort of rebuilt in a much more open world, in a world in which India is actually growing at a much faster rate. So you have to sort of rethink how one would sort of conceptualize the policy and the processes.
That's right. I mean, globalization meant that we were now in competition with other countries for attracting investment. I mean, notably China. The political system in China is more conducive to mandating change, mandating a different way of doing things, and I believe that they've been handling their urbanization process better than we have. Maybe not in a sustainable manner as we would now wish it to be. But people have realized that if India is to grow, we have to have cities, cities at work. Mm-hmm.
So if we talk about trying to build cities at work, what does it mean for us? I mean, how do we make that happen? Where does innovation need to happen? What are the things that we need to sort of sort out?
Well, there are just this I would say almost every aspect of urbanization, from understanding the forces of urbanization, the urban-rural linkages, the location of urban settlements, from an economic point of view, from a geographical point of view, and of course from a political point of view. Location of urban settlements, to their design, to the engineering of the cities, to how to manage them and how to fund them, and how to look after all the social aspects of large, agglomerations of people. Many of them speaking different languages from different parts of the country, different cultures, in people in different parts of the world. It's a massive, and when you consider that, look at the figures, the fact that if India is to grow at 8 to 10% in terms of GDP, then urbanization is an obvious corollary concomitant to that. And the expectation is that over, as you well know, that over the next 50 years, the urban population of India, which is currently somewhere near 350 million, will increase by 500 million to 850 million over a 50-year period. This process has to be managed well. If it's not managed well, it's going to be catastrophic. Because cities are, after all, they're the cradles of civilization and culture. I mean, this is where knowledge and thought and action and everything is city-based. Even advances in agriculture are city-based, strangely enough. And
so what I hear you describing in a sense is the attempt at the IIHS curriculum. I mean, you've sort of outlined the kind of things that we need to deal with in the curriculum process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not only, I think there has to be, first of all, in the curriculum, an understanding of problems, and then an understanding of where solutions could possibly lie, both looking at the realm of theory and also looking at what actually happened, transpired in various parts of the world.
The question, of course, is assuming that we're able to sort of train and educate people around all the things that you talked about just now.
Well, half a loaf is better than none. And so I don't know the numbers that would be required, but I would imagine that they would be massive. But we need to have people who are not only knowledgeable, have understood the problem, have understood what kind of solutions are likely to work, but have the passion, the missionary zeal, the desire to be agents of change, to transform India. I mean, that's what we need in this country. And hopefully this band of people that we will create, however, even they are small to begin with, I think they will have an enormous leavening, catalytic effect on people. And well, may the numbers of this tribe increase, and I'm sure that they will. I'm sure that they will. Look, this is the most important thing that's happening in India today, and that's urbanization. Unfortunately, we don't track urbanization like we track motor cars or steel or things of that sort, But perhaps the most important economic activity that's occurring in India today is its urbanization. And it's not just an economic activity. It's it's transforming the whole of society. It'll transform society, transform its political institutions as well, and political behavior.
So, given all of these sort of aspirations, do you think Bangalore is the right place to start with?
Oh, absolutely. Even though I'm very partial to Bangalore, having chosen this as my new home. That's about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But I think that Bangalore has many advantages. It has a tremendous climatic advantage. There's plenty of scope for expansion. Land is available. I think we have, I once met a former chairman and president of the World Bank, and told him that while Delhi is the political capital of India and Bombay is the commercial capital of India, Bangalore is the intellectual capital of India. And I think it's a wonderful place for an institution of this sort. And I think we have a very welcoming government over here. People whose eyes have been opened, thanks to the IT industry, to what can be achieved.
So, given that, don't you think our being here could make a difference to Bangalore's? Bangalore has all these great things. It also has some severe urban challenges.
It has. Bangalore has been totally transformed over the last 20 years, 15 years, even the last 5 years. The landscape keeps changing at an unrecognizable pace. Sorry, what was the question?
The question was that we have all these challenges. So Bangalore has lots of opportunities.
Yeah, well, it has. You see, our problems stem from again lopsided growth. And I think the fault lies both with the private sector and with the government sector. We created jobs and we created job places, but nowhere for them to live or send their children to school or hospitals and so on and so forth. You know, if I may refer to the Tata Group, when J.N. Tata or J.R.D. Tata planned new industries, they planned cities to go with them. And they gave as much importance to the planning of the city and to people's homes and to the physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure as to creating the job opportunities. And that's where we went terribly wrong, unforgivably wrong. But we are, I think, now on the job and trying to rectify the state of affairs.
So you think the IIHS could play an important role in helping do this for Bangalore?
Yes, I think it would certainly play, I think, a crucial role, not only in terms of ideas, but in providing trained professionals who can actually implement those ideas. And you know, one of the problems in this country has been for many years, and I've been to many conferences where people say the same thing over and over again, that India is not short of ideas. What we're short of is in people who implement them. And I think IIHS has a fantastic future role to play.
So where did the idea of the IIHS sort of grow from New Bombay, from other things? How did it sort of come about?
How did it come about?
Where did the IIHS idea, where do its origins lie?
Well, I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. It lies in the enormity of the problems that the people of our cities face, and the very challenging tasks ahead. Not just in terms of setting right the wrongs of the past, but in preparing for the future, and preparing, as I was saying, for the 500 million people who will live in urban agglomerations, who will move into urban agglomerations over the next 50 years. And therefore, there is a crying need. You know, I've experienced city governance at a kind of a grassroots level, as having been the president of a residents' welfare association, and well, as you can see, I've torn my hair out in despair. It's not just natural causes. We just don't have people with the knowledge base or the interest or the passion that is required to manage and transform our cities. We just don't have those people.
So if you were talking to prospective sort of learners and students who come to the institute, what would you tell them? I mean, why should they actually be coming here? What do they do here? What changes could they actually make in their own lives and other people's lives?
Well, they would be playing a huge role in the transformation of India. And that should be sufficiently rewarding in itself. But I'm sure that it will not be limited to job satisfaction, but it will bring them all the material benefits also that everybody wants in the course of a working career. There's a huge challenge, and they're being. And you know, one other thing is that while you need not only a professional class of people to bring about change, but you need enough people among the citizenry who understand what it is that needs to be done. And I hope that over time, as you produce hopefully hundreds of thousands of alumni, we'll have people on both sides as professionals who are managing change and transformation, and as citizens who understand that these things need to be done. And we're talking about change that is equitable and change that is sustainable. And not change for everybody, not just for a few.